Joining me to offer his perspective on some recent decisions by Governor Walz, as well as the feasibility of autonomous vehicle technology taking hold in Minnesota, is the Vice Chair of the Transportation Committee, Senator John Jasinski. Welcome.
Thanks, Shannon. Thanks for having me.
Last month, Governor Walz announced that Minnesota will join 14 other states in adopting stricter auto emission standards by requiring that automakers offer more low-emission and zero-emission vehicles beginning in the year 2023. What's your view?
Well, you know, I'm not so much in favor of that. I think the auto dealers should have their choice and let the market determine what vehicles are offered and what people want. California obviously has a lot more people than we do. They have a totally different climate that we do. So there's a lot of issues, and I think the most important thing is we'd like to have hearings in the Transportation Committee. We'd like to have hearings on this and talk about it and have some debate with the stakeholders versus just having the governor come down with his standard. So I would wish that we'd have more hearings and talk about it, talk to the auto dealers, talk to the people, talk to the farmers, talk to people in different areas, in the suburban areas and the rural areas.
Is there anything that you could do legislatively because the governor is doing this through a rule change, is there anything legislatively that you could do in committee that would allow you to have your views heard? Well,
that's something we want to bring up. I'd like to see some informational hearings on it just to bring up the issue so people can input on this and how it may affect different stakeholders.
Okay. Also last month, the governor established a council on biofuels to help guide policy toward greater production and use of biofuels. The state has fallen behind the goals set by the bipartisan Next Generation Energy Act, which was signed by Governor Tim Pawlenty in 2007. Is the expansion of biofuels a good idea?
I believe it is, yes. I mean, our farmers are out there and they can help produce with biofuels, and it's a very strong economy, especially in rural Minnesota and in southern Minnesota is very strong. I think by increasing the amount we put in and that we're using, I think is a great thing for Minnesota.
Okay. In 2018, Governor Mark Dayton established an advisory council on connected and autonomous vehicles, which is called a CAV. Now Governor Walz is forming an advisory council to build on that work. So what are your thoughts on whether and how Minnesota should implement autonomous car technology or driverless cars? Well,
cautiously, I think. I mean, I actually authored the bill for the platooning bill for some trucks where they can actually go 3 in a row, and drivers have to be in those vehicles, but it's starting with the technology to make sure things are working and to make sure it's doing safely. So I think we have to be cautious about it, but I think definitely we're going in that direction. I think the car manufacturers and people want that now. They're seeing more and more of it. I myself have a Ram, and it has the lane assist and the adaptive cruise control. So you get used to those things, and they're very nice to have. But it's really kind of focused on the urban areas, rural areas with gravel roads and things that they can't follow. I mean, obviously you need the lines painted, so there's some issues you have to look at. And just the pure cost of having to upgrade the infrastructure is a little bit scary to me because we've been trying to get more money for roads and bridges, and our townships need more money for roads. So the added cost of some of these things to add on to those are concerning to me, so I think we have to look at it cautiously. And I would hate to see someone injured by a vehicle that was, not anybody in there that hit them. So I think there's a couple of cases of that out there now, and we want to be cautious of that just to make sure that we're protecting our citizens on the safety side of it.
To talk a little bit more about the platooning thing, so this is a way, we have long-haul truckers moving things around. Your bill would have a driver, a person in each truck, or correct, just like in the first of a line?
In each truck would have a driver just because, again, the safety issues, but they would be connected and then they could stay closer together so they wouldn't need the maximum distance between the two, and then they could benefit from drafting and things like that. The drivers would be in all of them if they needed to be, but they can actually use some of this technology to let them follow, and if they need to be to override, they can, but they'll have to be in the truck. And that was Senator Newman's and my concern as well, to make sure to have people in these until we really have the science perfected before we can actually take somebody out at some point in time.
In a sense, it's like airline pilots. The plane actually does a lot of its own flying, but there's still a human there in case of emergency.
Absolutely.
Okay. We're seeing incremental change, and you mentioned this with vehicles with park assist or emergency brake, or, there are functions that are coming on board that are making humans have to do less in their cars. But proponents of driverless vehicles contend that the time saving and the economic benefits that could be reaped from this occur when no one is responsible for driving the car at all. Is it the role of the legislature to decide, assistive technology versus completely autonomous, or is it the market, or is it both?
I think it's a mix of both. I think we need to make sure that we as the legislature and the state are comfortable with the safety and that it's not going to put someone in danger. And, you know, I've been around for a long time. I was born in the 60s, and, you know, driving a car is something sometimes you like to do. I mean, I actually like to drive.
I do too.
And actually for people to sit back and to be able to relax while somebody else is doing that is going to be different. So I don't know how to, I mean, it's definitely coming. But I think we have to take it slowly, cautiously, and make sure that we do have those safety mechanisms in place to make sure that people are safe. But it's eventually going there. The adaptive cruise control I have is very nice. It's, you know, it's changed the way I drive now, because when you're behind someone, you don't have to keep braking. It automatically brakes for you, and it does that. So it's changing, but I think we have to be cautious and watch how it progresses. But again, I think it's really more focused on the larger highways, suburban. You get out in rural Minnesota, is this going to work when you pull into a fair and want to get it parking in a field to get a spot? So I mean, there's obviously places where it's going to advance more faster, and then some areas they really need to look into more detail. And in addition to that, our weather, our climate with snow and those things are all things we got to look at. So it's very complicated, but I think Minnesota and a lot of states are moving forward.
Now, you mentioned that there was one incident, there may be more, but there's certainly one incident in 2018. An Arizona woman was hit by a self-driving Volvo that was being tested. And in that year, then 4 of your Senate colleagues introduced a bill that would ban self-driving cars from state highways and roads unless the automated systems are disabled and a person is actually doing the driving. Just from the point of view of the legislature and people's suspicion and fear and all of the roadblocks that you're laying out, is this an uphill battle in the legislature?
I think it is. I mean, it sounds great, but there's just a lot of things you have to work through. Stop signs, curve signs, no passing, all these things that you have to look into. And the patience of the people, if they, you know, want to be able to pass and they can't in the vehicle. And it's evolving, and I think it will continue to evolve, but I think it's gonna, I think they call it the Class 5. There's 5 classes. To get to the Class 5, I think is still quite a ways out there. As you said, I think it's Class 2 or 3, where they're assisting, but they're not actually doing it, is going well, that's progressing. But to get to the actual full stage of a Class 5 autonomous vehicle is gonna be a ways, and I think. I don't know, maybe they'll surprise us, but I just think there's a lot of issues we need to work through before we get to that.
Some of the reading I've done has said, you know, in the 2020s, in the next 10 years, you know, this technology is really going to come on board. But this technology also is going to rely heavily on infrastructure and the communication abilities between the vehicle and satellites or whatever. Just, you know, I mean, there's a lot to think about. So considering that Minnesota is already challenged to maintain its current road, bridge, and transit infrastructure, how can the state really even consider, and what's the balance between transit? I mean, does driverless cars jeopardize, you know, transit dollars, and do people own driverless cars? I mean, there's a lot of questions.
Well, it's all very competitive, there's no doubt about that. And just an example, so I have the driverless, as I said. Well, now I got the upgrade on the new Apple phone, and for some reason it's interfering with my wireless cell phone in my phone to connect, and it keeps rebooting. So there's a lot of little things just like that we have to look at in the future that could affect that and how it's done. And again, roads, bridges are very important. You know, township roads and county roads throughout the state of Minnesota and rural Minnesota are really struggling for money. So to put all this great technology in the metro area and let rural Minnesota be overlooked is going to be very concerning to me. So I want to make sure that we have a good balance, but I think it's definitely something we're going to look at. But we definitely have to find a balance, that it's a good balance between rural Minnesota and suburban Minnesota, and getting between the two. So obviously the people in the metro get out to the rural areas and we come into the suburban areas. So that inner areas are areas that can be improved on this, but again, the pricing and how much we spend on it is going to be a concern to make sure that nobody in the whole state, or one Minnesota as Governor Walz calls it, doesn't get overlooked in this issue.
A cautious approach to emerging technology. Senator Jasinski, thank you.
You bet. Thank you.